Hey mages, welcome to Total MTG, welcome to today's video. Today I'm going through some super budget meta decks. These decks are being played on a ranked arena, and I've sourced out what the best decks are with the fewest rares. So if you've been looking at playing some meta decks, you can see some of them have like 25, 30, 40 plus rares in some of them. These is a maximum. I've had 2 of the decks have 12 rares, 2 of the decks have 11 rares, and there's one deck that only has 9 rares in. Now, these have all been doing quite well on the ladder and, putting up some really good results. So what we look for when we're looking for budget meta decks is a deck that's consistent, plays well, and then just can save you some of the rare and mythic rare wild cards. So without further ado, we're going to get on to today's decks. So we have the 5 decks here today, and we're going to have a little run through how they play and talk about some of the important cards in the deck. Now, this first deck is a budget Simic deck. It is based around, some important cards. We're looking to bounce stuff and everything like that. So, it revolves around this town ain't big enough. So this spell costs 3 less to cast. If it targets a permanent we control, then you return up to 2 non-land permanents to their owner's hand. We've got some good stuff that we can bounce back and do some shenanigans with, without a doubt. Storm Chaser's Challenge is a very good card in bounce decks. You've seen it in pixie decks and everything like that. This is ideal to bounce. I generally don't go for the level 3 when I've played this, but I do the level 1, do level 2 to get a target instant or sorcery back. Usually you're going for this town ain't big enough, or you can get back one of your counter spells, something like that. Or this also has return target creatures or enchantments to their owner's hand, so we can return up the beanstalks and get that draw again. We can return one of these creatures to protect it. This is the idea of this, to keep these on the field, this coming in, flashing in, tapping stuff down. Now, this is the great one to recur. A lot of decks, like I say, will run 4 of these, but this iteration only runs 2, and from my playing with it, it's been great with just 2. Now, I would probably like 4 in a deck if you've got an extra couple of spare wild cards going. Put this in there. Maybe drop your single Brave the Wilds. This is a deck that's done well with the results. So I'm not going to say just don't play this because this is the as the deck was, but that would be one that I personally would swap for an extra Storm Chaser's Talent if you can, because that is just such a good card. Bouncage with Into the Floodmoor as well, and then you've got ways to go through your deck. You've got Sleight of Hand to find what you need. Bushwhack, great fight control on this. We've got big creatures, we can fight way to keep it clear in this deck, or if we need to, search for a land. Cachet will mill cards, and then you get to put a permanent card from the mill cards back into your hand this way, so we can mill. Perhaps it will hit the Storm Chaser's Talent or the Beanstalk. We get that back, or something, really good. Most of the rares in this deck, say there's 12, 8 of them are in the lands, and that is what keeps the decks consistent because of the rare lands. The Maze with Surveil, and then it runs 4 Yavimar Coast as well. So you could, if you want to go super budget and cut the lands out, it won't be as consistent, I will say, for you new players and everything like that, or beginner players that want to look at these budget decks. But you can play this with just a minimal amount of rares, and then gradually, as you get your collection better or you've got more wild cards, you can put these in and the deck will just become better. But this Simic deck is a lot of fun. It's very awkward to play against, and it's a really good budget deck. So our next deck with 12 rares again is a Golgari Poison deck. Poison, you see it every now and again, but you don't see it too much, but it's been slowly creeping up with a few little results. I've come across it a few times because, this card is a beast of a card. A venerated rot beast, toxic become, whenever a creature you control becomes target spell, opponent gets a poison counter. So if they go to kill one of your creatures, they still will start off with that poison counter. And that is the idea of this deck. Poison counters is 10 or more, so you need to get that instead of doing the 20 life. But you still, do have a lot of big creatures in here, like Bloated Contaminator, the Atrocity as well, Atrocity with 4/4. So you can do a beatdown with this deck as well, but obviously it's quicker to get the poison counters in. Quick brief look at the stats: 24 creatures, 16 non-creatures in this one, and it only runs 22 lands with a 2.7 average in this, and it's just 4 rare lands in this. More of the rares, 8 rares, are in the main board of this. 4 of them being Bloated Contaminator, doing what green does above the stats. This is one of your beatdown creatures, and it's one of the most important creatures in the deck because when this creature deals combat damage, you get to proliferate. It's got the toxic one, trample over to get the damage over, so you get that poison counter, which is really good. So tokens are just going to be useless against this, and then you get to proliferate and put an extra counter on there as well. You've got good creatures like Skulldweller in this deck, early plays with the 1-drops, trying to get this down early, Death Touch, stopping any aggro packages coming at you really quick. This is a good blocker for us. And Venerated Rot Priest is good. Why? Obviously can die to removal, but so can most creatures. It's not a thing, but it's still a very good 1-drop. And dropping either of these two on turn 1 is really, really sweet. Necrogen Communion. Enchant creature you control. Enchant creature has toxic 2. When it dies, return it card to the battlefield under control. It's a nice card, this one. It's an interesting card. I've never played this in my Golgari Poison decks, and in my practicing, I've never actually, got to play this. But if you do pick this deck of one of your decks to play, let me know how this, fares for you. Sometimes I'm thinking I would like a little bit more removal, maybe some. Go for the throats or something like that, a little bit more removal. But yeah, let me know how this goes to you. Personally, when I've played this deck, I felt like I needed removal, but the deck has been doing well as is. But I wasn't overstruck with this one in the deck. I must admit, I'm looking for more removal with how best of 1 standard is. Talking of removal, we've got Vraska's Fall. Sack a creature or a planeswalker, so we have a bit of protection against planeswalkers, and it can give that initial poison counters, which is what you need when you're trying to proliferate with certain creatures as well. Interesting card, this one, Golfing Scrapchat. It enters or dies, proliferate, so no toxicity on this one. It's at the top end. Can be just a play and win when you get it comes in and then proliferate. So just a couple of these in there. You don't need any more on these big 5-drops because you're with the aggro meta of standard. It's better to have the lower drops like very Rat, this toxic one, dies, proliferate. So even when creatures die, you can get to do the damage and hopefully get some wins that way as well. One more to talk about. I'm going to talk about Drowning Anchor. The -4/4 is a sorcery. Is okay. Stays away from a lot of the big creatures though, like Sheoldred and a few others that are quite awkward. But still, it's only in there as a 2-of, and even late game, it still can be used just as that final win if you're stuck opponent on 9. Poison counters, this can just proliferate. Even if it doesn't kill the creature that you're trying to do it, you're just trying to get it for the proliferate in this. But poison, very good fun deck. Different way to play if you want to do it and try and get the poison counters. Less damage to do than getting the 20. But let's get on to the next deck. So with 11 rares, we have a mono red deck. Mono red deck with running the Callous package, which is using Burn Together. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to any other target. You would have seen this a lot if you've been playing a lot of standard. Still with 11 rares, a lot of the mono red decks still have a lot of rares in, well above 11. So there's obviously different rates where you can go super budget. But for me, this is a very consistent deck. You're looking at building up your Heartfire heroes, especially loads of them on, because when this creature dies, it deals damage at equal to its power to each opponent. And the idea of this deck is that when you get to sack the creature using Burn Together, you're doing a lot of damage, and usually that is your way to win games. The idea is to build up creatures. So with Heartfire, you've got Monstrous Rage that can give it +2/0 and then put an aura roll on it. Turn Inside Out, a good way to protect a creature. If your Heartfire's about to die, give it that final pump to pump it up. If it targets it, puts a 1/1 counter, then gives it a +3/0, 5 damage to opponent, and then you're going to get a creature out of it as you manifest Dread as well. So keeping this up to protection is always nice, unless you're looking and you're attacking and you do have a win to go where you can use the prowess on your challenger, pump up, and give this a win. It is generally used to protect Heartfires, I've found when I've played this deck, but can be used as a pump spell with your prowess creatures to get through some extra damage if you want to try and win quick. Screaming Nemesis, good to stop the life gain of opponents. What this deck wants to do is just win quick and fast, and this on a turn 3 play is great. As soon as it dies, if a player dealt damage this way, it's hard to block with this. They tend to let it through because if you're playing any life gain decks, it just stops the whole plan. And then, against this deck with no life gain, it can be pretty mean. Lightning strikes, 4 of them, 4 burst lightnings as well. It's just got so much burn and damage in this. And, what what I like about this deck as well is the interactions with Heartfire being a mouse and the Ember being a mouse is having Rockface Village, because you can target your mice with this and then you get to trigger the abilities of Ember Heart and put the counters on Heartfire Hero every turn as well. So that is a really good land, really good uncommon land that works perfectly in this type of deck. But this deck is all about aggro, getting in there quick, getting the damage in, and then maybe sling them some spells with Kalos and basically getting some quick wins. Sometimes a quick loss, but this deck is the deck. If you haven't got much time, this is the deck for you. 2 decks to go, and we have a Lifegain deck, and I've been playing this deck on the ladder, and I've been absolutely loving it. Come across mono red, this deck, you know, they have to use all their burn spells on killing your hinterland sanctifiers, because whenever another creature enters you control, you get to gain 1 life. It's brilliant. I just love this deck because it can just get out of hand. Personally, amazing for dailies, I will say that, because if you've got 20 white spells or 30 white spells to do, you're just cracking all these 1-drops off and 2-drops, and you're doing them in seconds as well, and you're grabbing wins as well. So this deck, very good on the ladder. One card I want to talk about in this that I've never saw in it, and I played it, and it's actually decent. Cat Collector enters, create a food token, so there's a bit of life gain there. Whenever you gain life for the first time during each of your turns, create a 1/1 cat, so you can use that food token to create a cat token. And then, you know, just by anything, by gaining life, you've got Linden that when you attack, gain life each time, building up every time you attack with, you know, 3-4 creatures, you're triggering that. So then Ajani's Pride Mate is going to get 1, 2, 3, 4 triggers. Essence Channeler, when we're gaining a life, you get a 1/1 counter. This deck can get out of control. With one of these on the field and you just keep attacking, you've got the evasion with your flying creatures, Healer's Hawk, Ruin Lurkerbat, getting these down. If you've got your opening hand with Sanctifier in it and a Healer's Hawk, I generally obviously will go Sanctifier first, and then you will start gaining your life. Premium removal in white, Shelter by Ghost, gives lifelink as well. Turn 1 play, put down one of your 1-drops. Turn 2 play, if it's stopping saying awkward, you then get this down, and that becomes an awkward creature to deal with, and it gets you that life gain for then turning in your turn 3s, your turn 4, putting these into play, and your cat collectors, and then just building a mass board. Now with 34 creatures in your deck, you are going to be able to, you know, hopefully recover from wraths and lots of removal. It is removal standard, and this is a deck that just keeps coming back. Now it can obviously get overtaken sometimes, but you know, when mid-range decks start getting their bigger creatures in and Sheoldreds and stuff like that, that's hopefully when you haven't had to use these that you can then do it. You've got a couple of Destroy Evil that can deal with, you know, destroying those creatures with 4 or greater as well. But you're hopefully then got enough creatures that you will be able to go wide with, and then even just sacking those creatures as you attack it. You know, you're just attacking in, knowing that some will die, but you're trying to just, you know, pick off those last points of damage. And with this deck, sometimes you're building up 30, 40 life plus, you know, you just can keep attacking because you know you've got more creatures in your deck normally than your opponent. So you can just keep chipping away. A deck that I really, really enjoy this one, and I would definitely recommend giving this one a go. Last deck, just 9 rares, Mono Black Discard, always one of my favourites. Built mainly around 3 sort of important cards in this deck. Bandit's Talent, the Wincon. When this creature enters, they discard 2 cards unless it's a non-land card, but it's the level 2. At the beginning of each opponent's game, if that player has 1 or fewer cards, we get to drain our opponent 2 life, then we can go up to 4 to then potentially draw extra cards. We are doing lots of hand removal. We got Ruthless Negotiation. Hopeless Nightmare comes in, drains the opponent for 2 life, and they have to discard as well. Taking cards from hands with Deep Cavern Bat. And then we look at the rares in the deck. So 9 rares in total. We have 3 Preacher of Schism. Nice 2/4. Makes those lifelink creatures potentially can draw cards, but has Death Touch, which is really important. And then the 2 mythic rares. Sheoldred. Brilliant Wincon, one of the best cards in a recent standard for quite a long while. And then Liliana of the Veil, which is another discard option for us. which we can then either make opponent, just sacrifice a creature if we need to. But the deck has a lot of removal. 4 cut down, 3 Anointed Affliction for the Heartfires. That's what you're aiming for in those red decks. So unless they can't, sack it at instant speed to do the damage, we're exiling so that we don't do the damage. And then 4 go for the throat as well. Plus, obviously, having 2 creatures with Death Touch like Preacher and Sheoldredge, that is a way to kill creatures opponents have on the board as well. This deck is, a really annoying deck to play against. If you can get your turn 1 play of your Hopeless Nightmare or your Ruthless and you're going into the Bandit's Talent turn 2, it really does start to put the pressure on opponent because we have the removal to keep away the early stuff, and then late game we're coming in with these 3 really cool creatures, and having this there as when we start, either opponents discarding, if they have to, if they're a card drawing deck, we then, they're in trouble because then they're going to start taking 2 life and being drained, and then Bandit's Talent does the damage. Hopeless Nightmare can be a win on for that final 2 damage that I've done a few times. We're playing Hopeless and then just getting that last 2 life off opponent as well. This deck is one of my personal favourites. Really basic, 24 basic swamps in here. We'll have a quick look at the stats. Just the 10 creatures, 26 non-creature spells. It's all about the non-creature spells, this one. So very much an opposite to the previous deck. So if you like more creature decks, mono white's there for you. If you like decks where you're playing more spells, then this one is certainly for you. So there's 5 super budget meta decks that will hopefully rank you up on the ladder. Let me know in the comments which ones you are going to take to the ladder. Which ones are you closest to building? Which ones do you want to play? And then let me know how you get on. Hopefully you do pretty well with them. I've done, okay with them as well. So I've been playing them and enjoying them, like I said, especially with the mono white. I do like the discard. Sometimes I feel like with discard I'm running out my cards occasionally, but then you just pour Sheoldredge and it will bring you back into the game and get you that bit of life game. But all in all, I really, from testing the 5 decks, I've really enjoyed them. If you want to get any of these decks, you enjoy them that much, you want to get them in paper, check out my sponsors Cardmarket down below. You can get all your paper cards from them. Just want to say a big shout out to my Patreon. If you want to support anyone further, you can go and check out the link below. I appreciate everyone. Thank you so much for doing that. But you lot take care. I'll see you on the next video.